We confront a dark period during World War II, where unspeakable atrocities were committed against countless innocent women in Nazi women's camps. In this video, we will address the infernal experiments conducted on these brave souls, shedding light on the depths of human cruelty and the unbreakable spirit of survival. How does one find the strength to endure when faced with the unimaginable? Today, we explore the stories of incredible resilience in the face of unspeakable cruelty. Let's unveil the infernal experiments conducted on women in Nazi women's camps during World War II. The infernal experiments were a series of horrific and inhumane medical experiments conducted on women in Nazi women's camps during World War II. These experiments were a part of the broader program of medical atrocities committed by the Nazis under the guise of pseudoscientific research. Some of the most notorious experiments were intolerable first-up sterilization experiments. Women were subjected to forced sterilization procedures without their consent. The aim was to find ways to sterilize large populations deemed undesirable by the Nazis, such as Jews, Romani people, and those with disabilities. Various methods were employed for sterilization, including surgical procedures, radiation exposure, and injections. In some cases, castration was also performed. The Nazi doctors attempted to legitimize these experiments by falsely claiming that they were conducting scientific research to improve the Aryan race. They used pseudogenetic theories to justify these heinous acts. Awful. Something that would send chills down your spine. Gynecological experiments. These involved barbaric procedures like forced abortions, castrations, and the removal of ovaries, often performed without anesthesia. These experiments aimed to study reproduction and infertility. Shockingly, the doctors meticulously documented their experiments, recording details of the procedures and their effects on the women. This was done with the intention of producing so-called research to support their pseudo-scientific claims. The women subjected to these experiments endured not only physical pain, but also severe psychological trauma. They were violated in the most intimate and personal ways imaginable. Infectious disease experiments. Women were intentionally infected with various diseases, including typhus, to study the progression of the illness and test potential treatments or vaccines. These experiments were often fatal. Beyond the physical suffering, the psychological trauma inflicted on these women was immense. They were forced to endure the agony of untreated illnesses, knowing that they were essentially being used as human guinea pigs. After the war, some of the doctors involved in these experiments were put on trial during the Nuremberg trials for their crimes against humanity. Then there were bone and muscle regeneration experiments. Some women were subjected to experiments where their bones and muscles were intentionally injured, and then various treatments were administered to study the regenerative processes. These experiments were often excruciatingly painful. In many cases, these experiments were conducted without the use of anesthesia or any form of pain relief. This meant that the women experienced extreme pain and suffering during the procedures. The procedures involved in these experiments were highly invasive and often included the breaking of bones, amputations, and other traumatic interventions. Women became lab rats. Pharmaceutical and chemical testing. Women were forced to consume or be injected with various substances, including poisons and experimental drugs, to study their effects. Many of these experiments resulted in severe injuries or death. A wide range of substances were tested, including drugs, poisons, and other chemicals. These substances were administered through various methods, including ingestion, injection, and inhalation. The women subjected to these experiments did not provide informed consent. They were forced into participating and often had no knowledge of the substances being administered to them. The experiments were conducted without any form of medical oversight or supervision. There was no consideration for the well-being or safety of the subjects. Radiation experiments. Some women were exposed to lethal doses of radiation to observe the effects on the human body. These experiments were conducted by a group of Nazi doctors, including infamous figures like Dr. Karl Klauberg and Dr. Joseph Mengele. The women subjected to these experiments were primarily inmates in women's concentration camps, such as Ravensbrück, Auschwitz, and others. It's important to note that these experiments were not conducted for any legitimate scientific or medical purpose. They were part of the Nazis' systematic campaign of dehumanization, torture, and genocide. Many survivors of these experiments faced severe physical and psychological trauma for the rest of their lives. After the war, some of the doctors involved were tried for their crimes at the Nuremberg trials, though not all were brought to justice. Remember that this is a deeply sensitive and distressing topic. When discussing it, it's crucial to approach it with utmost respect for the victims and to provide appropriate content warnings for your audience.